heading deep into the Appalachian Mountains, one of the oldest and most mysterious regions in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and let's take a look.
Folks, you ever wonder what ghosts actually are? I think maybe they might be scars left on the earth from some traumatic event. I had a philosopher friend tell me one time he thought it was just history screaming from the past, refusing to be quiet. I kind of like that too.
I used to do house calls in the hills of the Appalachian Mountains. Many of my patients lived off the grid in areas where sometimes they didn't have running water or electricity. Oftentimes, I wouldn't have cell service or GPS, so I would be navigating using the compass in my car and a map. I was thinking of this story today because it's snowing outside, and during this particular encounter, I was going out into the middle of nowhere, like a very heavily forested area in the snow to see a patient that lived in a double-wide trailer in the middle of the forest. And like the GPS service, like the cell service, dropped me twice while I was trying to get to their place, and I kept passing the small, narrow gravel road that took me to their double-wide trailer, and it was just a mess. So I arrive to the patient's home. I knock on the door. The door opens like an inch. Mr. Boone says, "Are you alone?" And I said, "Yes, I'm the nurse practitioner here to do your house call." Closes the door, opens the door back up, tells me to come in and have a seat. I sit down, and it's almost like he mimics me exactly the way he sits down. And then, I'm talking to him. I use my hands a lot while I'm talking, and it's funny because he starts doing the same. The gentleman looks fine. I suppose it's what you would expect of someone in their mid-80s, with one exception. This person does not blink. Their eyes are wide open, and there's like tears coming down their face as if their eyes are so dry that they need to blink, but they can't. I finish what I'm doing. We do the visit. We complete the visit. I'm still kind of thrown off by the fact that this person does not blink at all and refuses, despite me asking, to address it, So I stand up. He stands up really quickly. And he said to me, "I'm still learning him." And I'm like, "What?" And he says, "I'm still learning certain things." Like, okay. Is there anything in particular you need to understand post-op? And he's still looking at me with these super wide open eyes, like they're starting to get pink, tears running down his face. And he takes a step towards me, and I take a step back. I'm like, "You're starting to freak me out now, right?" And he had said, "I got the voice right." And at this point, I'm just spiraling. I'm like, "What the are you talking about?" He goes, "I have the voice right. I can do the stand right. But you notice everything." And I was like, no, we're not doing this. No, man, I did my job. I'm done. I'm through. There's no reason for me to be here anymore. I've already got my bag in my hand. I had already stood up like I told you. I walked backwards to the door and out, gone. I'm going to my car, right? And then I hear someone call out to me, "You forgot something." I didn't forget anything. And that wasn't his voice either. That is not a man's voice. Most unsettling, messed up thing I wish I could explain to you. Got in my car, drove away. I actually still have a picture of the road leading up to that double wide trailer because I thought I perhaps might have to come back again, and I had such a hard time finding it. And I still wonder, from time to time, if that patient was sitting down when I sat down and standing up when I stood up and walking with me, almost trying to pick up on small nuances. And it makes me wonder, did they just not understand blinking? Could they not mimic the blinking? And so they couldn't look as natural as they were trying to be. I never believed in skinwalkers. Never. Right? Come on, that's kind of a far cry. Let's be serious. But I wish I could explain to you how strange this person was. It was such an odd visit. I didn't end up going back. I never had to go back to that person, which is excellent because I don't think I really wanted to.
I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and I used to date a girl who could see things other people couldn't. So I hadn't been out of high school long. I decided to move in with my grandmother. I call her Nana. I moved in with Nana to take care of her because she wasn't doing well. This one night in particular, my girlfriend was at my Nana's house with me. I was in Nana's room. She's in a hospital bed because she can't get up. She's bedridden. I was talking to her. She's looking past me in the corner. She's smiling like you might smile at a baby or something to make him kind of giggle. She was smiling like that to the corner past me. My girlfriend would not come in the room. I thought that was weird. I was like, why are you not coming in the room? Well, she stood out in the hallway, looking in the same corner where my Nana was looking. After I left the room, things like this happened a lot. So it wasn't like terribly freaky. She suffered from sundowners after the sun went down. Her mind kind of went a little bit. But this one night, my girlfriend solidified what my Nana was seeing. We left. I was like, why didn't you go in the room? She said there was a little girl in the corner. Excuse me? What little girl was in the corner of my Nana's room? Okay, what makes this crazier is my Nana had, I guess you would say a niece, her sister's young daughter passed away years ago. That is the only person I can think that could have been in that room that my Nana was seeing that my girlfriend also saw. And this wasn't the only time that my girlfriend saw things that I could feel, but I couldn't see. I don't see spirits like that, but I do see things that you can't explain in Appalachia.
Growing up in a haunted house in Appalachia. My parents ended up getting divorced. My mom and I ended up moving back into this historic home. My brother and his new wife have moved into their own house. At some point in this time of us leaving the old house to moving back to the historic house, my mom was in another relationship. So it was just the three of us. There were a couple times that my mom's boyfriend, came into the living room or kitchen or whatever, just swearing up and down that one of us had said his name, called for him. There were a few times that I heard my name called thinking it was my mom calling for me. It wasn't. One of the first things I remember happening after moving back is I had a girlfriend over one day. Now, at this point, my bedroom was no longer the purple room by the front door. My bedroom was now in the room off of the kitchen. My parents had finished the big back room, which was like the new master suite, if you will. That master suite was virtually on the other side of the wall from the purple room in the front. So still complete opposite ends of the house. One day I had a girlfriend over. I'm maybe 14, 15 at this time. It's just us. My mom left to go run some errands. Her boyfriend was with her. So 100% just us alone in the house. And I remember we were in my room and we were kind of just like laying on the bed, just chilling. And I was telling her the stories of strange things that have happened in that house. Well, I'm not even freaking kidding you. I swear on everything this happened. I'm telling her this stuff and I told her about the knocks. I told her about my dad, checking the walls when we first moved in and something knocked back. I swear, not even 30 seconds later, it's like a moment of silence in our conversation, where we just kind of like, we're sitting there. Knock, knock, knock. And one of the walls somewhere, like we faintly heard it, but we heard it. She thought it was me. Like she thought I somehow moved my knuckle up against the wall real quick just to scare her. And I was like, dude, my hands are right here. Like it was not me. Like no, like we were both freaked out. And yes, I went to check the front door, just to see, just to be able to say it definitely wasn't this thing or that thing. Now, this next thing that I remember happening really freaked me out. Growing up, I was a huge Atlanta Braves fan and it was season. So I was in the living room, sitting in the recliner, glued to the TV. Mind you, my mom and her boyfriend are in the master suite, which is now in the back of the house, if you will. Still the complete opposite side of the house from where my bedroom was off of the kitchen. Since I can remember, my mom has had this same radio in the kitchen my whole life. This old flat radios, just digital, but you have to like turn the knobs to turn it on. You have to like scroll the knobs to click it on or off, and then you have another one that controls the volume that you physically have to scroll. And my whole life, my mom has always listened to the same one radio station, which is 107.7 WIVK, the country station. It also had the dial to control the station. So tell me why I'm sitting in this recliner watching the Atlanta Braves, and out of nowhere, I hear this burst of sound from the kitchen. I mean, we are talking like just full blast static It really freaked me out. So I kind of just like am frozen for a second. I'm thinking to myself, surely they can hear that and they're going to come in here and check, and I'm not going to be alone. They didn't. They were too far apart in the house for them to hear anything. My next thought was, okay, maybe one of them walked past me and I didn't notice it and they're messing with it. Went on for a solid 3 minutes. And when I tell you just like this overwhelming fear came over me, I mean, like I was frozen. I was paralyzed with fear. Eventually, I get up the nerve to go investigate. So I just slowly make my way into the kitchen, and sure enough, the clock radio is literally on full blast, turned all the way up as far as it can go on the volume knob. The radio dial is somewhere completely different. Like it's just static, a strange frequency, but like it made no sense. Kind of similar to the toy, like you have to physically change these things for this to happen. So I just turned it off and just kind of looked around and went straight back to the living room. Can't remember if I went and asked my mom about it or not. I probably didn't, because I think she just wouldn't believe me anyway. Next thing I remember happening after that did include my mom, because she witnessed it too. This was another one of those points in the story where I'm like, Mom, you're not telling me something. Like, you're keeping something from me, because your reaction to this is not mathing. A little bit older at this time, around like 17, 18, I think. I was working my first job, and I remember I used to work pretty late. Like it would be like almost midnight sometimes before I got home. And so my routine was, I would come home and I would just go into my mom's room and I'd sit on the bed and I would talk to her. After that, like she'd go to bed and I'd go do my own thing. And that was just the daily routine. What's important to understand here is the layout from her room to the bathroom. Her master suite is now finished off the back of the house. It shares a wall with the purple room, which was the original bedroom I was in. So then this is the hallway from the two rooms here. And then the bathroom is just right across the hallway. So from the master suite, with the door open all the way, you can see straight into the bathroom, down the hallway, straight into the bathroom. You see when you look at the bathroom is you see like the sink and, the mirror, etc. So I'm sitting in there, my mom's bed one night, having this conversation with her. At the time, she had this little Chihuahua dog, this little old thing who would bark at anything and everything. Tell me why this dog didn't bark. So we're sitting there and we hear the creaking of the bathroom door. It's an old house, all original doors, etc. So we hear the creaking of the bathroom door and we hear the knob jiggling. So we both get real quiet and look over our shoulders a little bit. And sure enough, the door is just barely creeping open. The dog is just on the bed looking with his ears up, but he's not barking, which was weird. And then the freaking faucet turns on. A solid one-piece knob that you have to push pretty hard to turn up and open the stream is on, and it's just flowing. And I remember just being frozen again and just looking at my mom like, well, I think she thought it might be a person. It clearly wasn't. And if I remember correctly, I believe we also heard a flush of the toilet next. See, these are the kind of things that I find myself remembering, and I'm like, how am I going to sit here and say I don't believe in this stuff when I literally lived through all this stuff? I digress. So this is happening. I'm sitting here just like, Mom, she's just sitting there like, yeah. And I'm like, what? Like, this is happening right now? And like, do you believe me now? Like, what do you mean? And this woman seriously is like, she's almost in La La Land asleep as it is, but she's like, yeah. My mom has just always had like under reactions, in my opinion, to certain things. But come to find out, she did share with me some experiences that she has had ongoing throughout her entire life as well. So she's kind of blasé about it at this point.
Moved to the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is located in the Appalachian Mountains, when they were 12 years old. The house was around 60 years old, and her parents had done some renovations to it. They had turned the daylight basement into a master suite, so she got the original master bedroom upstairs. From the moment she moved in, she started seeing figures moving out of the corner of her eye, but whenever she'd look, nothing was ever there. She started having really weird dreams. Her closet door would open and close without any explanation in her bedroom, even though they had like that super thick shadow shag carpet. So the doors were really hard to open and close. Like, you actually had to, use force. Like, there was no chance that these doors were opening or closing due to a draft. So one day after she had been living there for around a year, she was out exploring the woods behind the house. It was a very rural area, and I already know y'all are going to give me the way that I say rural in the comments, but I'm from Appalachia. What do you expect? So she knew there were no neighbors around, but as she was exploring in the woods, she came across this old abandoned cabin. She immediately got really bad anxiety about this and left. Well, that night she had vivid dreams that she was walking alone in the woods again, and she came across that same cabin. But in her dream, there was a light on in the cabin window, so she went inside. The second she walked through the door in her dream, the door behind her disappeared, leaving her trapped inside, so she was trying to escape. As she's trying to find an exit, she comes across a room that is just on fire. And in this room, there's an old lady surrounded by decaying bodies. This old lady pointed at her and accused her of starting the fire. This lady told her if she caught her, she was going to unalive her. The rest of the dream, she was just running around trying to find a way out until she finally found a window to climb out of. The second she escaped, she woke up, but when she woke up, she couldn't move her body at all. But she could hear footsteps around her bed, and someone sat next to her feet on her mattress. Not to get off topic, but I've had that happen to me so many times. Please tell me I'm not alone. There's been so many nights in my life where I've felt somebody sit down at the foot of my bed when I know good and well that nobody's there. There's been other times that I've felt something crawling up my bed. I don't know. Anyway, she just kept trying to move, and she was finally able to roll over and turn the light on. But next to her bed was this dark figure. She said it looked like she was staring directly into a black hole. It swallowed all the other darkness in the room. She could see that it had red, bloodshot eyes, and it was just smiling at her. Ugh, that's so creepy. She started screaming like I think any of us would, and she woke everybody up in the house. She never saw that old lady from her dreams again, or that black figure, but she said the paranormal activity in the house ramped up after that and lasted for years. She'd feel hands grabbing her feet from under the furniture on a regular basis. Things would go missing and then reappear again in weird places. Door handles would jiggle at night. She said she had a few sleepovers, but all of her friends would refuse to come back over after a while because they all experienced things too. The day she moved out was the day that it finally stopped. This story's so creepy, especially telling it outside at almost dark in the Appalachian Mountains.
Okay, so to start this story, I'm going to say that I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains. So we're going to start with that. To save a whole lot of backstory and just give you a little bit so that way it makes sense. My parents were really young whenever I was born. I'm talking 14 and 16. And so for a chunk of my life, my grandparents took care of me. My mother moved into a trailer that was next door to her parents. I want to say at this point in time during the story, I was about 5. Could not have been older than 5. So that puts my parents at 19 and 21, okay? And the bedroom that was mine whenever I stayed there, it was essentially a glorified closet, okay? Dimensions, 7 foot wide, like when you stick your arms out, maybe 7 feet by like 10 feet deep, okay? Like a glorified closet, okay? So I had a small twin mattress in there, and then there's a little nook where I had a bookcase and a little light that you could flip on and off. That was my nightlight. So trailer was set up, walk in the door, living room, hallway, my room, and then a bathroom, and then their bedroom was in the back, okay? My dad's family had a nickname. Essentially, all the grandkids had nicknames. My nickname was Girly, okay? I feel like it was ironic because I was not girly. I was essentially a boy. I mean, I ran around with no shirt on. I played Hot Wheels. It was essentially just a sarcastic, ironic nickname. I was girly. So my mother didn't call me that. Only my dad's family and my dad called me Girly. And that's a very key piece of information. My mother never called me Girly. She called me Tiff. So one night I'm at my parents' house, staying the night, and from the hallway I hear my mother. She's like, Girly, Girly, in a whisper. And everybody recognizes their mom's voice, and so it wakes me up. Girly, Girly. But I don't see her. And I'm like, what? Because I'm a little kid, and you woke me up whispering, Girly, Girly. And I'm like, what? Nothing. She never comes to my room, doesn't say anything else, nothing. Girly, Girly. And I finally sit up, and I'm like, what? You know, because I'm a little kid that gets woke up at, I don't know what time it is. It's dark. It's past dark time, okay? So I sit up, and I'm like, what? And about this time, because my bedroom door's open, now mind you, I'm in a closet, okay? My bedroom is essentially a closet, so there's nowhere to go. This time, my mother stands in front of my doorway, and it's not my mother, okay? My mother has holes for eyes, okay? And it's her face, but her jaw is way open. Her mouth is way open, and there's no teeth in there. And my mother's kind of big. Like, she's always been kind of heavy, okay? And it has on her nightgown, the nightgown she had on. And I remember it because she had this nightgown for years. It was like a medium-colored blue, and it had little stars and moons all over it, okay? This thing had my mother's nightgown on, had her big upper body. We all have, the bat wings, so, bigger upper body. But this thing had like a little skinny toothpick. If you could imagine somebody that weighs like 90 pounds, how skinny their legs would be, but with somebody that weighed 250 pounds upper body. And I mean grotesquely skinny legs, like not just a thin person, but bone with flesh wrapped around it for legs and feet. And that's not how my mom is built. She's got her upper body and lower body match. She's big up top, big on the bottom, okay? And whatever this thing is standing in my doorway has my mother's face, but there's 2 black holes for eyes, a gaping open mouth with no teeth in there, and bones for legs. And it's standing in my doorway of a 5-year-old me, not saying anything, but not coming in. And I'm petrified. I can't move. I don't know if I breathed. It felt like eternity, okay? But it was realistically maybe only 2 or 3 seconds. And then it turns, and it walks towards the living room, and I can hear it walking in the same pattern my mother walks, okay? And then I don't hear it anymore. But it doesn't sound like it went anywhere. It sounds like it took maybe 10 steps, which would be just enough to get into the living room out of the hallway, and I don't hear anything else. And I'm terrified. Like, I'm shaking. I'm terrified. And I start going, like I'm trying to yell for my mom, but I can't make my volume happen, okay? And so finally I yell, "Mama!" And then I hear her coming from her bedroom down the hallway. And now I'm terrified because I'm thinking, what if this thing gets my mother, And she comes in the room and she's like, "What?" And I was like, "You was calling for me." And I couldn't tell her what had happened. I'm crying because by the time I see my real mom, she's wearing the nightgown thing, that the thing had copied. But it's actually my mom at this point. She comes in my room, and I'm like, "You were calling, like, you were hollering for me." And she was like, "We're asleep. Like, I was not hollering for you." And I'm crying at this point. I can't even tell her what's wrong. I want my mom, I'm 5. So she gets in the bed with me, and she was startled enough that she had put my ball bat by the bed. That's how scared, I guess I scared her that bad. Because she's 19 at the time, too, And so she sleeps in there with me that night. And time goes by, okay? This is a decade later. Actually, more than a decade. This is like 13 years later. There's a big age gap between me and my baby sister. We're almost 11 years apart, okay? She's a young child. I never told her the story about what happened. I never told her about this. I never even really told our mother what happened, like fully. So my little sister, near the same age, she couldn't have been older than 7. Okay? And she doesn't tell me this story either until she's almost an adult, okay? But the way she recounts to me is she's no older than 7, or she could be younger, okay? She's laying in this is a different house, okay? So not even the same house, same street, different house. She's in our mother's room, that she shares with, her dad, okay? My sister's dad. And, what's the details? She wakes up, and laying in the bed with her is essentially the same thing I saw. It looked like our mother, had 2 holes, and almost like our mother's face, but it was not our mother, okay? And so my sister's like freaking out, backing off the bed, crying for her dad to come, because the thing that's our mother is not our mother's in the bed with her. And then she said it's like it goes away, and you know what I mean? Like it's gone. But they had chalked it up to essentially, oh, she just woke up and was confused. But When she told me that, I was like, no, I know exactly what you've seen because I've seen the exact same thing. And I think it's absolutely bananas that we never told each other the story, and we've seen essentially the same thing over 10 years apart in 2 different houses. And can't get any explanation of why or how or what it was. What I think it is I think our mom essentially just has such negative energy attached to her that's just a manifestation of the negative energy that's attached to her. And we've seen it.
They say that you're not supposed to see your own doppelganger, right? And that it's supposed to be a bad omen or something bad could happen to you afterwards. Well, someone in my family saw their own doppelganger, and this story is terrifying. It's one of the scariest stories that I've heard any of my family members tell. What's so crazy about this story is that it happened to my mom's twin sister's daughter. So it's important to note that a lot of people in my family have seen things. A lot of people in my family have gifts. What to the extent of those gifts, I'm not sure, but everyone has seen something or heard something at some point. My aunt has sleep paralysis horribly. She has her entire life, my mom's twin sister. And she lived in this house at one point, and this house used to freak me out so bad. Now, I never personally saw anything in this house, but I would always have nightmares in this house, and I would never want to go in the basement alone because the basement just freaked me out. So one night, my aunt puts my niece to bed, puts my nephew to bed, and then she goes to sleep. So after my aunt falls asleep, she wakes up in the middle of the night, and she starts to hear what sounds like a radio changing stations. And this is freaking her out a little bit, but then she realizes that she cannot move, and she realizes that she's having sleep paralysis. Now, what's so creepy about this is that numerous times this has happened to me. The first thing I will hear when I'm about to have a full-blown sleep paralysis attack is I will hear what sounds like a radio changing stations. So she hears this, and then suddenly she starts to feel something crawl slowly on the bed. First it's hands, then it feels like the knees. And then she can hear this laughing sound, but it's like this deep maniacal laugh. It slowly inches closer towards her. It gets right in her ear, and it goes, Anne. Anne is my aunt's name. So at this point, she's freaking out. Her husband is sleeping next to her, and she's trying her hardest to move. She cannot move. She's trying to wake him up, making any sounds she can. She cannot move. As she's trying to fight her way out of this as hard as she can, she suddenly feels whatever this is leap out of her bed, jump on the floor, and run down the hallway. She finally gets out of it, and she sits up, and she's like gasping for air, like literally terrified her. Even though it was just sleep paralysis, she was like, that just felt real. There was something wrong about that. Now, down the hall is my cousin's room, my little cousin's room. We're just gonna call her Mackenzie, and she was 6 years old at the time. She ends up falling back asleep, and nothing happens for the rest of that night, but she does note that she feels like there's something in that house. A couple nights later, she puts my niece and nephew to bed. She goes back to sleep. She wakes up at like 3 o'clock in the morning again, and she hears my cousin screaming at the top of her lungs. So my aunt goes to get out of bed while my cousin, I keep almost calling her my niece, is running down the hallway, tears pouring down her face. She is absolutely hysterical. My aunt is like, what is wrong? What's wrong? And this is what my cousin tells her. My cousin said that she was laying in bed. She woke up in the middle of the night, and she got scared for no reason. She then looks down at the end of her bed, and she sees something sitting at the end of her bed. At first, she's looking at it, and she's like, is my mom in the room? Is my mom sitting in the bed? She thought that it was my aunt at first. And then it turns its head slowly towards her, and it's her sitting at the end of the bed. She sees herself sitting at the end of the bed. And when it turned its head, it just smiled at her like this. So she saw herself sitting at the end of her bed, just smiling at her. A day after my aunt had that sleep paralysis where that thing ran down the hall towards her room. Now, they did end up moving out of that house, and my aunt was absolutely horrified by this because she believed her. My mom believed me every time I told her something happened to me when I was younger, and my aunt always believed her kids too. And they ended up moving out of the house, not for that reasons, but just because they ended up moving out. Like, she ended up getting a divorce from her husband. My aunt said that she would always have crazy nightmares in that house. And when I say crazy, like, I'm talking about nightmares that kind of seeped into reality.
Heard versions of my whole life. I call it Topper's Bluff. There's this area, a couple towns over from here, way up in the hollers, that around the Civil War time, folks was running kind of as a commune. The Civil War was a terrible time for all of us here in America. And they had a farm up there that they were operating, and there was a family, the Freemans, that had moved up from somewhere in the deep South. James Freeman was one of the first African-American landowners in the region, apparently. He brought his family up, him and the missus, and their young daughter Abigail, and they got them a little parcel of land on this creek and started doing real well. One of the families on that commune was called the Morgans. Mr. Morgan actually sold James Freeman the parcel of land that he started farming, and they were neighbors. And Mr. Morgan had a son. His name was William, but everybody called him Topper because he loved to hang out in the tops of the trees. I mean, if there was a tree, this boy would climb it. Well, Topper and Abigail was about the same age, and they weren't a whole lot of kids on that holler. So nature being what it is, boys and girls, they started hanging out with one another, and before you know it, they sneaking off and holding hands and canoodling. So, I mean, they's a mite smitten. They loved one another. Is in the top of one of them trees, they's up there holding hands. They swore eternal love to each other, and as soon as they's old enough, they's going to get married and live happily ever after. They's the cutest thing ever was. Well, one day, Mr. Morgan came to his son Topper and said, "Son, we got to run to town. I got to go on a supply run. Me and your ma's going to take the horse and the cart and head into town. You stay here, watch over everything, and we'll be back, tomorrow evening." This wasn't anything unusual. It happened from time to time, and Topper was old enough where he could handle this. So his mom and pa set out. Now, this was before there was a lot of roads set up, so they had to go in the creek. So as soon as they turned the bend in that, well, we'll call it a river, Topper went out running and motioned for Abigail to come down, and they climbed up in a tree and was just staring lovingly in one another's eyes, whiling the hours away. Well, they's up there for a good while when Topper heard a noise. It's horses beating in the creek coming around, and he knew it wasn't his ma and pa. So he started watching, seeing who the visitors were, because they didn't have a lot of folks just showing up this way. Well, as they turned, Topper saw they was wearing gray coats, and they's pretty beat up. He knew what that meant. Topper jumped down and told Abigail to be quiet. This small platoon of Confederate soldiers rode up to the gate there at the Morgan farm and said, "Son, it is your lucky day. You get to support the Confederate Army. We're here to commission all your bacon, all your bullets, all your flour, all your coffee, and we'll take any horses you have." And Topper said, "Well, sir, I sure would like to help you, but we ain't got much of that stuff. My mom and pa went to town. They took the only horse we have, and they's on a supply run. I can fetch you a little bit of stuff." Well, this sergeant or whatever he was wasn't in the mood for no foolishness. He looked down and said, "Son, if you don't fetch us some supplies, there's going to be trouble." Well, Topper didn't want nothing but to get these folks off the farm, so he ran around and collected whatever he could find. And he ran it back out. He said, "Sir, this is all I got." He gave it to the sergeant. They weren't happy, but they rode on. Well, as soon as them soldiers were out of earshot, Topper looked up and motioned down for Abigail to come out the tree. She hopped down, and Topper said, "Run home to your mom and pa. Tell them there's bad folks about. Don't come out till I come get you. Stay in your house and hunker down." Abigail ran on home, told her mom and pa what was going on. Well, the next morning, Topper still ain't come and got Abigail. She was having a pure fit. Her mom and pa didn't want her to leave, but she wasn't going to listen as she ran out the house. As in the creek bank, she first noticed something was wrong. There were streaks of blood there on the rocks, on the shoals of the creek. Looked like little strips of fabric from the shirt she knew Topper was wearing yesterday. cold chill ran through her the closer she got to the farm. As soon as she got to the gate, that's where she found him. He was still alive, hanging there. They'd strung him up to a tree. He was barely hanging on. She kept a little pocket knife in the apron she always wore, and she cut him down. They must have dragged him, Lord knows how many times, through that creek. I mean, he looked awful. But he still smiled at her as she held him. She said, Abigail, you found me. He died right there in her arm. She held on to him till his ma and pa came back. You can go to a place today called Topper's Bluff. Now they say on a certain night, if you go camping out, as many teenagers will do, you might hear something. You might hear hoofs of a horse running up and down the shallows of that creek. You might hear a young boy screaming for help. Those are the bad nights. There's other nights when you're up on Topper's Bluff. You might see a young dark-skinned girl and a young light-skinned boy walking along the creek bank holding hands. You might even see them in the top of a tree looking at each other all in love. Those are the good nights. That's how I like to think about Topper and Abigail.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe and share your own stories in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.